Hello, welcome to Creative View Podcast. This is Catherine Kirby and my dog Hartley. I thought I would do a podcast this morning and review this article called 25 Tips to Quicker Knitting. And I positioned my camera so you could see, at least in part, the beautiful snow that's been coming down the past 2 days. It is a lovely Big Soft Lake. So here I am. I'm going to review this and you can decide for yourself. This came out of a knitting magazine by Leslie Petrovsky and said the YouTube videos of Hazel Tyndall, the unassuming knitter from the Shetland Islands who captured the 2008 International Trophy for World's Fastest Knitter, are dazzling. Her needles are a blur of mechanical efficiency, every movement a marvel of precision. Unlike Tyndall, who in 3 minutes clocked 262 stitches, most of us plod along wishing we could finish the second sleeve or sock more expeditiously. Wouldn't that be a great word for a spelling bee? Spell expeditiously. Which is why we turn to some of the most accomplished knitters in the world, including Tyndall, for advice, for speeding things up, or as one crocheter quipped, if you want to knit faster, crochet. So herewith, 25 tips and tricks for turbocharging your knitting. Number 1, watch and copy other speedy knitters. Tyndall, who grew up around production knitters in Shetland, gleaned her technique early by studying experts. I've been watching knitters from the time I could focus, she said. I always knew it was possible to knit smoothly and efficiently. Number 2, practice, practice, practice. Number 3, discover different knitting techniques. The author of Principles of Knitting, June Hemmons Hyatt, referred to the first chapter of her book, which describes alternative knitting methods for carrying your working yarn in your right or left hand. In addition to the standard English and continental styles, there is the combined method, supported needle strategies, parentheses, and expeditious. Boy, they love that word, don't they? An expeditious right-handed style done with a knitting belt or sheath to hold one needle, and numerous other varieties. She said she recommends learning more than one method because they all have pros and cons, and one can be faster when used for a certain type of pattern, while another might be faster for something else. Number 4, embrace your left hand. If you are a die-hard right-hander thrower, learn a left-handed method to expand your options, develop your brain, and perhaps increase speed. That might be a big perhaps. Many veteran knitters swear that carrying their yarn in the left hand boosts their pace. For example, Mary Jean Mucklestone, author of Fair Isle Style, skews continental for speed, carrying 2 and 3 colors over her left index finger for color work. You can also get these thimbles that you put on your finger and will hold your yarn. Number 5, find your own way. Broadway sweater designer Amy Micallef has earned a reputation for churning out star quality sweaters. She's knit for Broadway productions, including Finding Neverland, and it lists a bunch, In the Blink of an Eye. Originally a crocheter, Micallef didn't get knitting until she found a way to make it more like crochet. While she holds her yarn in her left hand, tensioning it over her index finger, she idiosyncratically uses her left middle finger to flick the yarn over the needle. Do whatever you need to do to get the string over the stick. Do what makes sense for your hands, brains, and muscles. I am laughing. In medical school and later in the residency program, we were expected to write articles for patients. And the best advice was stay to about a third grade level for your words. Man, they're pulling out some big words here. 6, have a deadline looming. Veteran designers Debbie Bliss and Melissa Leitman joke that deadlines speed up knitting, but you don't get a book deadline to get your needles clicking. You don't need a book deadline. Holidays, birthdays, new babies, and other occasions can speed your knitting into high gear. I wish that were true for me. I'm the opposite. When I know that something needs to be done, I want to do anything else but that. Is there anybody else in the viewing audience that's like that? 7, choose the best needles for your yarn. Carla Scott, executive editor of Vogue Knitting, opines. My husband and I play word games, and I had opine the other day, and I'm like, what does that mean? Had to look it up. I don't know anyone in my everyday world that opines anything. She opines that matching tools and media, you get faster stitching. Pair wooden needles with a slippery yarn, metal needles with a tightly twisted wool or wool blend, and plastic or baleen for cotton yarn. Number 8, use chunky yarn and big needles. While this may not help your stitches per minute count, it will allow you to produce FOs faster. Number 9, or knit with finer yarns. Though fatter needles and yarns can yield a plethora of bulky, quick knits, they can be awkward to maneuver. If you want to boost your times, go fine. I definitely slow down when using thicker weights of yarn, observes Debbie Bliss. So generally, I prefer knitting with finer yarns. Well, I remember when I used to take painting classes that when you're used to a big canvas and big brushes, and then you're given something small and little tiny fine brushes, it is a big adjustment. Just like when you teach knitting or crocheting class and a student uses a bulky yarn and a appropriate hook, and now they're going to do a baby blanket with a finer yarn, they really have trouble adjusting. Number 10, mind your tension. Bad tension equals slow knitting. Your tension should be such that working yarn can slip through your fingers a tiny bit with every stitch, eliminating the task of stopping and pulling out more yarn. But it's a fine line to walk. While the tension has to be loose enough to do this, it also has to be tight enough to get good stitches. Number 11, keep your stitches close to the tip of the needle. I think that's a good one. When my husband was trying to learn how to knit, he had the stitches way back, and just to try to get one stitch up, he's pulling it. I was on the floor laughing. Number 12, pull lots of yarn. Every time you draw yarn from your ball, pull generous amounts to avoid frequent stops. 13, play fast music in the background. Lily Chin reports she can knit 1 stitch per second in stockinette. Adagio won't get you there, but Allegro certainly will. And I have told the story that a few years ago, my husband was invited to take me to a orchestra. And I took my knitting. A lot of the ladies said later, oh, I wish I would have taken mine. I wanted to, but I didn't. Apparently, when the music got really, really fast, I must have been knitting so fast. Everybody was watching me and I didn't know it. Everybody in our group, even the men, were laughing later, saying, every time the music sped up, you would be knitting so fast. 14, use charts instead of written directions. Brioche Queen Nancy Marchant offers this handy suggestion. A quick visual trumps the unwielding written word any day. Number 15, then memorize your pattern. Yeah, if it's easy. 16, read your knitting. Learn the mechanics of the stitch pattern. Be able to look at the knitting instead of looking at the pattern will shed lots of time. 17, don't use splitty yarns. Choose yarns with tighter twists to keep split stitches to a minimum. That will really slow you down. There are needles called Prime, P-R-Y-M, that have little scoops at the end, and that avoids splitty yarns. It just scoops it right up. 18, grease your needles. To rev up one's knitting, Lily Chin advises applying moisturizer to knitting needles, then wiping them clean for a slick finish. You can also buy polish. 19, select simple stitch patterns. Even easy peasy knit one, purl one can seem endless when knitting an entire sweater. Opt for stitch patterns with longer knit and purl runs to keep from toggling back and forth. 20, choose pointy sticks. 21, knit more often. Many super productive knitters sneak in knitting time waiting for the doctor at kids' soccer games or binge watching the latest season of their favorite show. That is true. Years ago, I used to jog, I used to run, I used to do races, and one of the running magazines talked about a woman that said, well, I'm running, but I'm not enjoying it. And they said, run more. What? I just told you, I'm not enjoying it. Right. Run more. If you're doing 1 mile, do 3. They're right. You enjoy it when you do something more. 22, learn to cable without a needle. Seriously, how many cable needles have you lost in the cracks of your sofa and so on? Freeing yourself from a cable needle eliminates time fishing for one in your knitting bag and increases your cabling efficiency exponentially. One of my customers said life is too short to cable. Anyway, 23, don't drink alcohol while knitting. Hashtag mistakes will be made. I once taught a class and the participants were quite intoxicated. They did not get very far. But I would add to that, don't knit while you're sleepy or tired, because the next day you'll be taking out what you did. We're getting down to the end. 24, consider a garter stitch salvage. Amy Mikulev, who once knit 7 sweaters in 5.5 weeks while also working full-time, adds 1 knit stitch to the start and finish of every row to speed up counting. 1 garter stitch bump equals 2 rows. She also marks each increase or decrease row with a safety pin to keep count straight. It takes all the thinking and worrying out of the equation. That's true. Repetitive counting takes up time. 25, drum roll. Decide who you are as a knitter. Not everyone wants to set speed records. Says veteran designer Deborah Newton, author of Finishing School, quote, I never consider speed as one of my priorities. The thing I am most interested in, pattern exploration, finishing, swatching, garment shaping, and construction, just do not lend themselves to speed. And I would agree. Every time I try to increase my speed, I end up with sore hands and not enjoying it. But, you know, if you want to be faster, there are some good videos out there. I saw one with an older woman and she had a 14-inch needle sticking out from underneath her arm. The correct word would be axillary or axillary. And it was just like a piston moving in and out. So I hope that this article might have given you some things to think about and that you enjoyed the beautiful trees and the snow. I'll see you the next time. Shine, baby, shine.